Most people don't know their own power. I'm going to tell you the findings of a study. And then I'm going to share a few personal stories with the hopes of giving you insight into your own powerful ability so that you can begin changing things in your life. First, the study. This is the study of all studies. For more than half a century, I, as chief investigator, closely began testing all things death. At the same time, I was enrolled as a subject. In this study, I was part of it just by being born, the study of life and death. Nothing is lost. Nothing. Not a person or a pet. And you and I, we continue on too. You will never be lost to me, nor I to you. From where I've been over the years up to this moment, fun, frightening, full of both laughter and tears, nothing is lost. The loves, the lives. Let me tell you a few stories. You might even be able to relate. When I was a child, about 2 or 3, I can remember my grandfather, Runyard, Jim Runyard. He had a flat-top gray crew cut, soft, wrinkly lips. He smelled of soap and raw tobacco leaves, kind of sweet and clean. He always sat in the same lazy boy rocker, and when I would come over with my parents, he would toss me into the air and catch me, and I would laugh and laugh, pure joy. I felt his love for me, even back then as a child, his deep, quiet chuckle, not a lot of words, but his eyes, I can still see his eyes twinkling at me. I loved him so much. So one day, we went to my grandparents' house in Antioch, Illinois, and I only saw my grandma and her dog Fritzy, her dachshund. And when I realized Grandpa wasn't there, I was confused. Later that day, I realized my family was also very quiet and they had stopped smiling. They seemed sad or worried. Something big had happened. Something had changed them. And where was Grandpa? But at 2 or 3 years old, I didn't know what. Later, I learned that they hadn't taken me to my grandfather's funeral because they thought I was too young. But I learned it was precisely this event of this going away that had gotten everybody's mood sideways. I noticed they started thinking about their own fears more, their worries and their problems. As it turns out, this is what happens when we have pain from shock. That Grandpa had died. This word died from something called a heart attack. And so that was my first schooling on what I plan to avoid happening to me at all costs. Who here has also experienced this with a loved one before you even knew what the heck it was? And that was just the beginning. This lesson, the feeling of powerlessness when someone is taken from us, why, it would continue throughout life as you grow up. Later, one by one by one, all of those in my immediate family blip went there to that grandpa destination. I was never satisfied with the religious ideas or even the sciencey ones about that event in our life. Just I had this feeling that there was more to the story. So began my intense curiosity that caused me to sort of pay closer attention, to be curious, because I needed to know what was really going on here. From this, after decades of being sad and fearful, like most are, of the perceived loss of another human being who's so dear to us, I started learning by listening for clues between the words. There's signs hidden in plain sight. So there seemed to be some sort of puzzle going on, and I decided I would play along. And I set out to take classes to learn anything I could about meditation, intuition, clairvoyance. And I remember asking each of my teachers at the end, what about mediumship? Where can I learn more about that? Well, folks didn't really know much about it. So it took me a while to get to spiritualism. Thankfully, I did. But then my biggest test as a spiritualist came just last year. That's my other story. My partner, Janet, and I met and fell in love as college students at NIU in DeKalb. We had made a life together. It was brilliant. My family was Irish descent and hers was Italian. Hers was South Side, Chicago White Sox. Mine was North Side, Chicago Cubs. As you might imagine, there was just a few arguments. It was an intense relationship, but so much fun too. We would end up traveling the world, and when it was legal, we got married. We started a family, and I gave birth to our daughter, Sophia, in 1999. Sophia was the apple of Janet's eye. She could do no wrong. So many dogs, a few cats, hamsters, fish, and trips later. What a wonderful life. Janet began having back pain in 2023. It just hung on. Then at the start of 2024, we learned the back pain was terminal cancer. So began the biggest test of our lives and my test. It was the test of a spiritualist. Now, Janet was no spiritualist. She was a skeptic. But with a hospice bed being set up in our home and me as her caregiver around the clock, we knew this was it. I knew this was it. This was and will always be the biggest test. Me, a spiritualist, having her transition into spirit form. And at the same time, she was being tested in her agnosticism. It took this advancing disease, which never did affect her brain, for Janet to open up to family and close people who had gone before. Janet began to be aware of them, those who were spirits visiting her in her quiet times alone. It was comforting to recognize who was there one by one, and she didn't even tell me right away because in Janet's analytical ways, she had been quietly studying what was happening. She was being comforted. They had been loving, supporting, and visiting, whether she knew it or not. So after weeks of connecting with them, she finally fessed up. She told me, she was a little embarrassed to admit it, that her grandmother had come to her. I said, in a dream? She said, no, while I was meditating. Ah. And once she started telling me, it would be more than her grandmother. And we started having a lot to talk about. One day she even said, you know, I wouldn't mind talking with Reverend Maurice. And I said, good, let's call her. And so began our phone calls with the Reverend Maurice Coverson, an ordained minister of Chicago's oldest spiritualist church, the Church of the Spirit. Then the day came, the day that Janet passed. The moment she passed, our daughter and I were there, and her dog was laying on her, and a cat on the dresser next to her. As her spirit left her body, the dog and the cat seemed to see something that human eyes didn't. Dogs can hear things that people can't. They seem to follow something invisible, something that went just a little above Janet's body, then out to the side of the bed. Their heads turned together and watched down the hallway toward the stairs and to the door. Then I think Janet was at our door because our Ring doorbell announced, someone is at your door. Or maybe her parents came to greet her. I cried. Yes, I grieved that big departure, that physical departure, because I liked her hand in mine. I liked her voice in the air. I liked the scent of her hair, and I liked the food she would love to craft. Her aunt's pizza-gine, that twice-baked biscotti, chocolate wafting in the house, warm out of the oven. There's nothing like a physical person alongside you to eat together, to enjoy being in the body. Our spirit is in a vessel. But then, just as I had hoped, Janet's presence, I don't remember the exact number of days, but I remember it felt like it wafted in, sort of like that chocolate biscotti scent. And she started interjecting comments. And she does today and every day. She chooses a form that looks closer to herself in our college years. She's often reassuring, funny, and she comforts me. Once, when I was lost in a sea of paperwork for tax returns for 4 people, including her mother, who also passed last year, I asked for Janet to help me, as I'm just not great with numbers. She came, and she helped me on and off for 8 hours until I was so exhausted, but done, proud of the collaboration. I should add, in full disclosure, however, that it's not all unicorns and happy fairies to hear from Janet, because the hardest part has been that our daughter isn't getting her visits like I am, and she misses her other mom terribly and wants to hear from her too. Many of you may be thinking, well, You're a medium, so good for you, but I'm not a medium. And I have a question for you. But what if you are? What if you are and you just don't realize it yet? Maybe it's that you aren't sure that you have that gift or any skills for seeing, hearing, sensing them in the way you want to. Also, consider this. If you are frightened of the idea of mediums, perhaps they are merely respecting that and they won't communicate in order not to startle you. Any of this is really up to you. All I can tell you is we all have to do what's right for each of us and not apologize. If anybody prefers, there are always mediums to help. Now, this is really challenging to talk about, and I realize that. But consider my Janet. Janet was a sarcastic skeptic about all religions and spiritual concepts, the woo-woo of faith. Buddhism was probably the most religious that Janet could understand or relate to. She actually had a Buddha collection. Last year, in the first 6 months of hospice care, we were very busy trying to prepare as a family to be safe without her, taking care of all the legal and details, making sure our affairs were in order. But the rest of last year, Janet began meditating and connecting. She just opened up to possibilities of what might be next. Certainly, she was very challenged by her circumstances, and they did change her. So her walls were lowered, and she was more connected to herself, which probably helped to open the heart and mind. Janet found that by taking the time to listen, practice, and ask those that she loved and lost if they were there in spirit form to help her connect. Janet imagined in her mind them. She imagined what they looked like standing with her there or sitting around her bed so that she could ask them questions. She made space for it to be the right time for it to happen. She became aware that they were showing up. And so, in the last part of her journey, they started talking to her in ways that she couldn't have imagined what happened for her. Janet was like Fonzie in the TV show Happy Days, unable to apologize or say she was wrong. So she just quietly told me what had happened. I was so excited for her. And so it seems that the day is going to come eventually when you and I will also make our move and leave our body, the simple vessel of our spirit. And as you approach that time, I encourage you to consider opening up, practicing listening, and finding more time, should we each be so lucky, to practice connecting. And those who care about you, who are already over on the other side, are eager to become your guide and help you as you travel closer to them. And so why not go ahead and invite them to come in while you're meditating or even during your dreams. They'll come and you'll be able to sense them, hear, feel, or see them. Or when you wake up in the morning from a dream, You'll have a great feeling and you'll share the story of what they said. All these things might sound pretty normal, and they are. But if you think about it, they're also mediumistic. I encourage you to just stay open. And when you stay open, you too will realize that no one is lost. And you just might feel like me, that you don't have to fear death. Those listening to this, put a little bit of time into giving them a chance to show you that they continue and they are around. But if you can, while you're investigating this, try to leave other people's opinion about the work out of your explorations, because there's no need to put energy toward worrying about what others think of you. Remember, it took pioneers to discover electricity, telephones, and even the Wright brothers' flights. They're all such discoveries. It took courage and exploration. And we can test for proof, just like scientists do, and use logic and reason like philosophers do. And when we do, we'll find out one way or another if there's evidence that the energy and personality transforms instead of being gone or lost. I know that after being tested as a spiritualist personally, losing Janet, but not losing Janet, that I have found that the theories hold up and it passed my test. I acknowledge that being here as a human being and a spirit at the same time is not an easy, predictable path. It can be confusing, emotional, and just thinking about it can be physically tiring. But at the same time, it can also be inspiring. And if you can feel them, you will feel overflowing with love and support around you. Those who loved us and walked alongside us when we were together in physical forms are our biggest supporters. Don't underestimate how many people love you. For example, you may not have known your grandmother in your lifetime, but I can tell you to rest assured, she still has tremendous love for you. All of us are well loved at all times. So, what can spirits do for you? A lot of things. They can help you. If you're taking a test and you can't think of the answer, you can ask them to help you bring the answer, help you to remember, and they will. They will send so many signs. They'll put them on billboards, bumper stickers, license plates. They might play a song on the radio or have a bird appear on your windowsill. There's so many endless creative ways that spirits try to get through to let you know they're there and they say hello. For example, maybe today, earlier, you were thinking about someone you lost and wondering about them. But I ask you to consider this. Did you think of them first? How do you know that they didn't think of you? Maybe that's what made you think of them. All of this can make me smile. And that's because contemplating the reality of spiritual continuation is a source of gladness. I can tell you one thing, spirits won't stop trying to get through to you until they feel you get the picture, that you don't need to be sad that they're truly all the way gone. They're not lost. They're excited for you to realize this. I can tell you something that I found myself just a little unsure of how to go forward to my social life, my family life, after I lost my life partner to what is a very difficult transition known as death. But inside, I knew that I wasn't quite as bereaved as many people are in my shoes, because I held the joy that I had already heard from Janet, and that I knew she would just keep coming and going, cracking jokes and bringing some of what she promised she would bring to me, the spook stuff, as she called it. What a true joy it is to be able to communicate with Janet. And while some people get it, some won't be able to grasp that I still have her. And I'm okay with that. We all have our own lived truths. Write a Post-it note to them. Invite them to come into your dream tonight if you're comfortable. Set the table, the place setting for them to join you, or something else that fits. Just be willing to open up to the possibility of finding yourself in conversation with the spirit and love of your siblings, your parents, and others. In your mind's eyes, seeing them, in your heart's ears, hearing them. They'll take breaks and you won't hear anything. They'll always come back. So the conversations, they always continue. And you will find yourself so glad you were willing to stay open to when the time was right. With your friends and your family who have transitioned, that truly no one is lost. Stay open.